Welcome to my Skyrim no kills challenge. I wanted to see if it was possible to go through the entirety of the Skyrim story without killing anything as the Dragonborn. Now I'm going to be the first to admit that I don't really like Skyrim all that much, which is partially why it took so long for me to get this video together, and also because I was playing Devil May Cry 4. How good is Devil May Cry 4? Excluding the level design. Anyways, I wanted to see if it was possible, as I'm not as familiar with Skyrim as I am Fallout New Vegas, and to a lesser extent Fallout 3. After we create our perfectly proportioned person, or PP person for short, I named the player character as Snake, because initially I had intended to do a big boss run, as suggested by a friend. However, I felt the stealth system in Skyrim and other Bethesda games are absolutely dogshit, so I decided against that. However, I am going to use that idea for my next one through a different game. A game with at least semi-decent stealth mechanics. Anyway, after creating our character, we're sent to be sentenced to death for unknown reasons. I choose to believe it was because we said that Bulbasaur isn't the best Pokemon. Just as we were about to be executed, a dragon interrupts and attacks the town. We flee and we team up with our executioners, because that seems like a great plan, and it's the same thing I chose back in 2011. Skipping past the intro, you can see me hiding behind a pillar, because at this point I was still on board for a full stealth run. That changed shortly after I realised how difficult that would be. After escaping, we head to the local town and help a blacksmith with his smithing. We make an iron dagger and a helmet, and I sell them back to him. After that, we help a local individual tell a girl that he loves her. Apparently that's enough for him to pledge his life to us, and we move on. After an incredibly long and boring walk, we finally make it to Whiterun. We talk to the Jarl of Whiterun. There be dragons in these hills.
Whatever you have to say to the Jarl, you can say to me.
He tells us to talk to his court wizard, and the wizard tells us to go to Bleak Falls Barrow to get some MacGuffin called the Dragonstone. That doesn't really seem to do anything, but whatever. I guess they just wanted us out of the castle for a few hours. After another long ass walk, we finally get to the Barrows. After we sneak past the guards outside the main entrance, eventually we meet up with this lovely fellow that has gotten into a bit of a sticky situation. Anyway. We free him, and then he decides to run away with the Golden Claw, as he wants the treasure for himself. Eventually he runs into a trap, and we pick up the claw from his corpse. We use the claw, and enter the tomb where the Dragonstone is. Once we enter inside, a Draugr overlord bursts out of the coffin. I try to sneak past him and try to retrieve the Dragonstone. Unfortunately, the stone is on his person, and he has to be dispatched. Luckily I have Sven with me, and he is quite handy with a bow and arrow. So I let him deal with it, and eventually he manages to take the Draugr down. We fish the stone off of his corpse and take it back. At this point I go to check to make sure the kill didn't count as my kill, and unfortunately, according to Bethesda, if somebody I know kills somebody, then I'm to be held responsible for that. Which is probably why my character started off arrested. So unfortunately the stats aren't going to be accurate. Just another really confusing Bethesda design decision, I guess. Moving past that, we enter the Jarl's castle, we give the Dragonstone, we're given a house called Lydia, we dismiss Sven and hire Lydia, and then we're told that there's been a dragon attack at the tower. We rush over to the tower, and I'd completely forgotten that I'd subscribed to the official Valve Bethesda Workshop mod crossover. So at that point, the space core for Portal 2 makes an arrival. I go to pick up the space core, and then the dragon arrives, and this next scene is incredibly painful to both watch and play. Have you ever tried to get a bunch of NPCs to slowly fire arrows at a fast moving target? If you haven't, you're in for a treat. After an incredibly infuriating fight, the soldiers eventually manage to kill it. I guess that's why it's called a dragon, because the fight was dragging on. I absorb its soul, and I'm told I'm Dragonborn, which means my dad fucked a dragon or something, I don't know. Moving on, we find out we have to climb 7,000 steps to reach the top of the mountain. And boy, is it a pain in the ass to walk all that way. We eventually make our way to the top of Brokeback Mountain, and thank God you can fast travel in this game, because that was a massive pain in the ass, and took way too long. Once we eventually get there, we meet up with some old gay men, and they tell me they want a taste of me.
Let us taste of your voice.
So we give him a taste of us all over his face and body. Once we've pleased him, he tells us that he can show us the way.
We can show you the way.
Eventually we're taught a few words and told that our destiny lies elsewhere. We're told that we need to get the horn of some guy called Jorgen Windcaller. We've got another long ass walk and end up in another cave/dungeon. I'll spend most of the time just running past all the enemies until we get to the end of the cave. We get to the horn and we find it's been taken by somebody else, and in its place a letter that tells us they need to talk to us. No idea how long that letter was there for, or how that person knew we were coming for the horn, but whatever, let's just roll with it. We head back to Riverwood and suddenly we're met by a group of Dragonborn cultists. It's always nice to be able to meet some fans of ours. Anyway, as you do when people try to tell you how great you are, I sort of just zone out and walk off and enter the local tavern. We meet up with the lady that stole my horn and we're led into her basement that she keeps behind a secret door. If she wasn't vaguely hot, for this universe at least, I'd be scared. She gives us some story about how the Dragonborn kills dragons and how she wants to commit dragon genocide. I personally think that just talking would be a better solution. Some of them seem kind of cool. Regardless, sorry to disappoint, but I don't kill anybody or anything. We leave the tavern, and this is actually a feature I had actually forgotten about in this game, but we receive 2 letters from a courier that tells us that 2 people we knew have died. As it turns out, those cultists of mine decided to kill Sven that just so happened to live in that town. We get there, and just as we arrive, by some miracle, Alduin shows up to bring another dragon back to life. Frankly, I'm just blown away by this revelation. Now, if you thought that first fight was a massively painful fight to watch, then this fight has nothing on this one, as it takes Delphine a solid 8 minutes to kill a dragon, which I will now speed up and overlay wacky music for your entertainment. After the fight, Delphine tells us that we really are a Dragonborn, despite us telling her that. Apparently her racism knows no bounds because she then starts shifting the blame of the dragons onto elves. She says the elves are behind it because she doesn't know why, she just says it's elves.
I owe you some answers,
Which is pretty much the standard operation for racists.
Whatever you want to know.
Trust me,
Nothing helps.
I know from first-hand experience. We travel to the elven party, we cause a distraction and we slip out the back door. It's at this point where I decide that the best way through this next section is to rely on stealth, so I decide to buy Become Ethereal, which makes it so you can't be harmed. I walk into the next room and am instantly harmed. Silly me for thinking that you cannot be harmed means you can't be harmed. After nearly a solid 20 minutes of being slaughtered over and over again, I thought that this was an impossible situation to get out of without killing anybody. Eventually, I find out that my captured teammate is the key to my freedom. I grab the key and force my way into the elves' secret hole. A few of the elves decide to come with me when I enter their hole. We head back to Delphine and she tells me that I'm safe in her room. Turns out the elves are after an old man called Esbern. He's some kind of old crazy hermit that has locked himself away in the sewers of Riften. We head to Riften and this place is a shithole. I'm pretty sure the entire town was modelled and created after another town local to me. That's a joke only 2 people are going to understand. We head through the rat ways and we find a few people hiding out there. Unfortunately, they're the type of rapscallions that aren't fond of wandering wanderers. So they try to attack me. I run past them into the ragged flagon. However, the enemies decide that they aren't going to let me go quite so easily. Unfortunately, these guys don't seem to have even half a brain between them, because they rush head first straight into the headquarters of their enemy. It's at this point that every member of the Thieves Guild gets up from their drinks and decides to take care of business. They're taken care of in less than 5 seconds. Finally we find our hermit, and after a long boring conversation he agrees to come back with us to Delphine. After a short conversation and a long walk later, we finally end up at the Blade's secret headquarters. After doing a few puzzles that a 3-year-old could solve, we finally get to the end of the secret temple and find Alduin's wall. A big ass engraving telling us that Alduin bad, humans good, and that shouting at things is the best way to deal with your problems. We're tasked with getting an Elder Scroll, so that we may time travel into the past. Unfortunately, the only being that is old enough to know where an Elder Scroll is on top of the throat of the world. We head back to the YMCA and talk to the old men there. They teach us the final shouts that we can make our way to the peak of the mountain. We make it to the peak and we talk to an equally old and cool dragon. He tells us that he has no idea where an Elder Scroll is, but he suggests that we try the college in Winterhold. We head to Winterhold and we meet up with the worst type of person, a gatekeeper that is stopping us from entering. She won't let us enter until we prove to her that we have some form of magical ability. We tell her that we are the Dragonborn. She says she'd be impressed if we can prove it, so we shout at her. Unfortunately, due to a slight miscalculation on her part, we blast her over the edge. Once we make sure that she's okay, we carry on to the college. Unfortunately, we then have to go back again to have her open the gate. On the way back, we're interrupted by somebody that's impressed with our ability to shout at women. This isn't really something that will concern us for this playthrough, but whoever wrote that must have been incredibly quick. We get inside, talk to an orc who proceeds to laugh at us, as all scholarly types do. We get the info we need and move on. We're told we need to go to the edge of the ice wall. I decide to take the fastest way down. Once we meet up with the hermit, he tells us that he knows where we can get an Elder Scroll from. After a really long and boring trip through some dwarven ruins, we finally get to a big dwarven puzzle with lenses, and a giant circle and some big circularly thing. To this day, I still have absolutely no idea what to do to solve this puzzle. I just push all of the buttons until the game tells me I've done the right thing. We grab the Elder Scroll and make our way back to the throat of the world. We time travel into the past and watch humanity overthrow the dragons. Later on we sit through a really boring meeting between the Stormcloaks and the Empire, but that's incredibly dull, so I will skip past that. Later we agree to capture a dragon, and it's at this point that I really wish that the dragons in this game were cooler and not just flying rats. Having the opportunity to capture a dragon and talk to it is pretty cool, but most of the dragons just fly down and you take care of them in under 2 minutes. Udaving agrees that if we let him go, he'll take us to the secret dragon location that allows Alduin to get into Sovngarde. We rush to Alduin's location and get into Sovngarde. Once we're there, we find a mist has taken over Sovngarde that causes souls to get lost and devoured. We make it to the feasting hall of Sovngarde. Unfortunately, there's another gatekeeper, and we have to do battle with him until he lets us in. I shoot fire out of my hands, and eventually he decides we are worthy. We enter and meet up with the heroes that defeated Alduin last time. We head outside and once more we shout out our problems until they go away. What happens next is the slowest fight in the game. It's incredibly painful and you're all lucky that I'm going to speed it up for you. Now this is where you could potentially say that the run fails. I had to finish off Alduin with the final touch, as neither side would fight once Alduin made it down to the last tiny piece of health that he had left. So I had to finish him off. However, you could also give some leeway, as Alduin doesn't truly die. After being congratulated, we're taken back to the threatened world and are made to have a long discussion with Parthenax. Finishing the game, this completes the run of Can You Beat Skyrim as a level 1 pacifist. Thus another challenge has been beaten off. Thanks for watching. Maybe you'd like to click on one of these videos for more. Alternatively, you could subscribe and check out my selection of guides, comical videos and co-op playthroughs. I recommend the Pokemon Crystal playthrough. It's very good if I do say so myself. Alternatively, you can give my brain a hit of dopamine by clicking the like button or leaving a comment. I could really use more dopamine.